Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going on a really high-energy dive into the incredible, invisible mechanisms that are literally controlling our bodies every single second of the day. We are talking about the autonomic nervous system, basically the master control board for everything your body does without you even having to think about it.
So picture this for a second. You're a medical student, standing right outside the exam hall, waiting to take your very first big paper. You haven't even looked at a single question yet, but suddenly your heart is pounding out of your chest and you notice your palms are dripping with sweat. Have you ever wondered what exactly is happening under the hood to cause those involuntary physical reactions? Well, that is your autonomic nervous system kicking into absolute high gear. To really figure out what's going on here, we need to meet our two main characters. On one side, we've got the sympathetic nervous system. This is basically your body's built-in alarm bell, driving that famous fight or flight response. Imagine you're a fish that suddenly comes face-to-face with a shark. Your sympathetic system is what instantly floods your muscles with energy so you can dart away. Now, on the flip side, we have the parasympathetic nervous system. This is your rest and digest mode. Think of lounging on a beach chair, reading a newspaper, just perfectly relaxed.
Okay, so here is our roadmap for today. 1. Meet the autonomic nervous system. 2. The wiring, anatomy compared. 3. The language, chemical transmission. And 4. The body's opposing responses. Let's jump in.
Section 1. Meet the autonomic nervous system.
The autonomic nervous system, or the ANS, is this absolutely crucial division that links your brain and spinal cord to your peripheral organs, like your heart and lungs, to keep you alive. But how is it actually built? Well, unlike your somatic motor system, where just one long continuous nerve connects your spinal cord directly to a muscle, the autonomic system follows a really strict two-neuron rule. It uses two nerves arranged in a series. It's kind of like a relay race. A preganglionic nerve leaves the central nervous system and connects to a postganglionic nerve at a little cluster of cell bodies called a ganglion. That's the baton pass. And from that ganglion, the postganglionic nerve travels the rest of the way to the target organ.
Section 2. The wiring, anatomy compared.
Now, if we look closely at the architectural blueprints of these two systems, they are incredibly distinct. When we compare them side by side, the differences are actually striking. The sympathetic system originates right in the middle of your spinal cord, the thoracic and lumbar regions, specifically from T1 to about L2 or L3. It features really short preganglionic fibers that connect to a chain of ganglia located just next to the spine, followed by these very long postganglionic fibers that travel all the way out to the organs. The parasympathetic system? It's the exact opposite. It has a craniosacral origin, which means it stems from the cranial nerves up in the brainstem, like the vagus nerve, and the sacral nerves way down at the very bottom of the spine. Its preganglionic fibers are incredibly long, reaching almost the entire way to the target organ, where they finally synapse with very short postganglionic fibers.
And this diagram brilliantly illustrates that divide. Over on the right, you see those green sympathetic nerves emerging right from the middle of the spine, synapsing really early at that central paravertebral chain before branching out all over the place. Then on the left, in purple, the parasympathetic nerves originate from the very top and the very bottom, those craniosacral regions, sending long, direct lines straight to specific target organs like the stomach or the bladder.
Section 3. The language, chemical transmission.
All right, shifting from the physical cables to the actual chemical languages these nerves use to talk to each other across synapses. First, we have to understand that chemical transmission always follows a few universal steps. Step 1. The neurotransmitter is synthesized right within the nerve terminal. 2. It gets safely stored away in little packets called vesicles. 3. When an action potential arrives at that nerve terminal, it pops open voltage-dependent calcium channels. This sudden rush of calcium is exactly what triggers the release of the neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft. And finally, step 4, the neurotransmitter binds to specific receptors on the next cell to trigger a response.
Now here is where it gets super fascinating. These two systems essentially have to be bilingual. At the ganglion, remember, that's the first connection point outside the spinal cord, both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems speak the exact same language. They both release acetylcholine onto nicotinic receptors. But at the final destination, the target organ itself, they completely diverge. The parasympathetic system keeps things simple. It just continues to release acetylcholine, but this time onto muscarinic receptors. The sympathetic system, however, switches languages entirely. Its postganglionic nerves release noradrenaline onto alpha or beta adrenoreceptors, and that is what triggers your intense fight or flight response.
Tracing these chemical pathways out, you can clearly see the universal use of acetylcholine at all those red ganglion checkpoints on the left. But as you follow the lines over to the target tissues on the right, you see the parasympathetic system sticking with acetylcholine for things like the salivary glands, while the main sympathetic line flips over to noradrenaline for targets like your blood vessels.
Now, what's really interesting about all these rules is that there's a pretty wild exception hidden in the sympathetic system. Take a look at your sweat glands. Sweating is undeniably a sympathetic fight-or-flight response to regulate your temperature, right? Yet the postganglionic sympathetic nerves wired to your sweat glands do not use noradrenaline. Nope. They actually release acetylcholine onto muscarinic receptors, which is exactly what the parasympathetic system does. It's just a brilliant, quirky little workaround in our biology. Oh, and there is one more absolutely vital exception to mention, the adrenal medulla. Think of this as the body's direct emergency hotline. It is innervated directly by preganglionic sympathetic fibers. There are 0 postganglionic fibers involved here. When it's stimulated, the adrenal gland acts like a massive ganglion all on its own, dumping a huge payload of 80% adrenaline and 20% noradrenaline straight into your bloodstream for a massive, instantaneous total body response.
Section 4. The body's opposing responses.
So bringing the anatomy and the chemistry all together, we can really see this physiological tug of war playing out inside your major organs, and the contrast is beautifully clear. If you face a sudden threat, your sympathetic system ramps up your heart rate and the force of every beat to pump blood to your muscles. It dilates your pupils really wide so you can let in more light and see danger better, and it totally decreases activity in your GI tract because, well, digesting your lunch is definitely not a priority when you're running for your life. Conversely, when you're resting, the parasympathetic system steps back in to lower that heart rate, constrict your pupils for reading a book, and ramp up motility and secretions in your gut to comfortably process your food.
But, the golden rules of innervation aren't always a direct tug of war. Yes, most organs feature those opposing effects, like the heart rate we just talked about. But sometimes they actually work together. For example, both systems can stimulate secretions from your salivary glands. They just vary the actual composition of the saliva. And crucially, some organs have single innervation. They are hardwired exclusively to the sympathetic system. Your sweat glands, your blood vessels, and your kidneys are all solely managed by sympathetic control, with absolutely no parasympathetic counterbalance at all.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to chew on. How does this constant, invisible push and pull silently maintain your everyday survival? Think about it. Every time you stand up, every time you eat a meal, every time you feel nervous before a big exam, these two systems are beautifully, seamlessly adjusting your internal chemistry and wiring to keep you perfectly balanced. It is literally a masterpiece of homeostatic engineering. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and definitely keep wondering about the brilliant mechanisms operating right under your skin. Catch you next time.